Ohio is an interesting place to talk about because right now our governor's looking at legislation to ban cell phones in schools or cell phone use. And I think the thing we learned the most and what we carry with us is it's about teaching smart use, not no use, because kids, as even we know back in the day, kids will do what they're going to do. And I think it's most important we give them the tools to do that.
You're listening to the SmartSocial.com podcast. I'm your host, Josh Ochs. This is our District Talk segment where we interview district leaders to learn how they're keeping students safe on social media so those students can someday shine online. Now, let's get back to the interview.
My name's Kristine Quallich. I'm the Assistant Superintendent and a Psychologist in Medina City Schools. We're located south of Cleveland, Ohio, and we have about 8,000 students in our suburban district.
Welcome to the episode. I'm so excited, Chris, for you to be here. I'll refer to you as you requested, Chris. Sometimes I might say the word doctor because you wear two very important hats. And we have a long-standing history between you, your district, and SmartSocial.com back when we got started. I'm really thrilled to have you here today. Now, your role as Assistant Superintendent is really interesting because you also have a role as a psychologist. So today, if you're listening or watching anywhere in the world to the SmartSocial.com podcast, this is an interesting one. Now, today, Doctor, we have a few questions for you. And I want to start off, let's put your Assistant Superintendent hat on first. What's your biggest accomplishment as a district over the past 1 to 4 years?
One of our biggest accomplishments came on the heels of COVID, so to speak. We went 1-to-1 in our district, so kids were given and provided with technology. But because of that, we also increased services to students and taught them, as we learned from you that 8 years ago when you were here, how to be smart with technology and use it in a safe way. So combining with that, we increased our mental health services. We increased our how to use technology in a smart way, as you would say.
Thanks so much. And in 2015, I got contacted through Twitter by shout out to David Kaufman, one of the best teachers, really nice person, a friend of mine now, which is awesome. And we got a random request. Hey, will you fly here? Can we get on board? The text was, how do we become a part of this to teach our kids how to be safe and smart online? And was so honored and so grateful to be a part of your community. And we flew out there to give a speech. And COVID changed everything, Doctor, right? So now the way you're teaching in the classroom is different. The way SmartSocial operates is totally different. So I want to dive into the next question. What advice do you have for other districts, other school districts, other leaders to deal with social media issues that may originate on a social media app, but then create a very real problem on campus?
Yeah, and Ohio is an interesting place to talk about because right now our governor's looking at legislation to ban cell phones in schools or cell phone use. And I think the thing we learned the most and what we carry with us is it's about teaching smart use, not no use, because kids, as even we know back in the day, kids will do what they're going to do. And I think it's most important we give them the tools to do that. And so I think what we learned most importantly, and we continue to learn, and whichever hat I'm wearing, sometimes I think it's like a baseball hair, right? You turn it front ways, you turn it back ways, is to give kids the tools they need, right? So even in the school, there are times to have your phone out, times not to have your phone out. But when you do have social media, what do you do with it? What are the good things to do and the not appropriate things to do with it? I've said too, that goes for adults as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There are bad things that will happen on social media, and it really causes an uproar on a campus. And many districts, and I know you'll agree, Chris, what happens over the weekend is a part of school on Monday morning. What would your advice be to parents or district leaders to tell to parents as a psychologist about how to open that dialogue about, hey, remember, here's a couple things we can do to get ahead of these problems?
I always say prevention is the best prevention. It starts way before that weekend when your child's on Snapchat and kids are talking to them or taunting them or whatever is going on. It starts with just being engaged with your child and knowing what they're doing in the first place. So we don't always know. I have 3 kids, 23 to 16. I don't always know what they're doing, but I am engaged with them and they feel comfortable talking with me. So I think it starts at the relationship level and being engaged and asking questions in the first place and them feeling comfortable telling you. It starts with them also feeling comfortable telling you they messed up and knowing that you'll be there for them. So I think it even starts at the basic level of relationships with your kids and knowing they have that ability to tell you whether they've messed up, whether they've done something well. But you couldn't have said it better. Things come into school, whether they involve social media or not, but even more specifically now that social media is involved.
A lot of people will ask us, Chris, and I think you'll agree with this, what's the best safety app that I can use to protect my kids and all this stuff? And we tell them, we're not paid by Microsoft or Apple or Google. We're only paid by districts to help protect. And so we'll tell you what the bad apps are and the good apps.
Right.
The only safety app that'll wake up at 3 a.m, the only safety app that really cares about your kids is the rich dialogue you have between you and your kids. Do they feel comfortable coming to you saying, you know, my mom didn't get Snapchat that well, but she was open enough to say, let me set up my own Snapchat and let me goof around with you on it and make those silly faces and do all this stuff. And so she at least is on it. She may not understand what all this stuff is, but I saw something inappropriate and I feel a little bit more comfortable going to her. And we like to remind parents, that is the only safety app in the world. Do not trust anyone else other than that rich dialogue you have, right?
And I think you would agree with me, no matter how on top of things we stay, we're never going to be on top of the industry, making the next best thing or the next thing where you swipe left and up twice to find, the secret door, to find the secret picture. So what you just suggested is the only way to stay on top of it, is to be engaged with your kid.
Yeah, to befriend the expert, your child, right? And I mean, even at SmartSocial, we have an army of incredible parents that do our research now. And we're always going, whoa, we have to be a teaching company because everybody learns a new button that we didn't know about, the software we use behind the scenes, and it moves so fast.
Right.
The next question I have for you, Doctor, can you provide some examples of how your students may have used their social media in your community at your school district in a positive or productive way that may have benefited themselves or their community?
Oh, I love that question because I think too often we focus on the hard parts, the things that have caused challenges, and not on the positives. So the first thing that comes to my mind is we had an incredible teacher here who's now a principal. Her name is Shannon in Buckeye. She had an entire class that created an app that allowed you to find historical locations in Medina, and then you would scan a QR code and be able to find the pieces of history. So it impacted not just Medina, not just our students that learned the history about those locations, but anyone who comes to visit historic Medina is able to scan those codes and learn the history about those places. So it was a while ago, but QR codes were just coming out, and those students then got to study history and create those codes. Just a great use of social media at that time.
You know what's really neat about that I get super pumped about is the kids will get to put that on their LinkedIn someday and their resume. And SmartSocial looks at thousands of resumes a year as we grow. And we want to make sure we bring the right people into our culture to make an impact. Every organization goes, what did you do over the summer? What are you going to bring to us? And that kind of a story is fascinating. So you learned something, you created something, you built it. People are still using it, maybe. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And I think just the experience, they worked with the Historical Society, just the lesson they learned was phenomenal. And again, I think it's a lot of what you teach. You can't ban technology, right? Now we're all talking about AI and its involvement. We're not going to ban things. We need to learn how to work with them and incorporate them in our lives in a safe way.
I think 6 months ago, because we've been talking about AI for quite a while, really diving in deep, people were like, don't use AI, don't use AI. And I was thinking yesterday, I'm pretty handy. I do a little bit of woodworking. What if as a kid, my dad taught me, I'm not going to ever let you use a power drill. You have to build a home with a screwdriver.
Yeah. What a great analogy.
You can still mess up with a power drill, but it makes it go faster. And that tool is helpful when it's helpful.
I'll show my age. Email didn't exist when I started in the district. So when I needed to talk to a teacher or schedule a meeting, I'd have to put a note in her mailbox. What if I said, I'm not going to use email? Think about how much more efficient we are.
Yeah, so true. My next question for you, and this is both hats on, what suggestions do you have for parents to encourage their kids to use technology in a positive way, both in the classroom and at home?
We just had the FBI here to present to parents on safety, and I thought their suggestion, the FBI agent suggestion, was one of the best I ever heard. For adults and children, if it's too good to be true, then it is. It was a phenomenal suggestion. And he said that goes for all of us. if you have elderly parents and they get a call that they've won $1 million, if it's your child and they get catfished by someone who's saying, you're the best person I've ever met, can we connect? If it's too good to be true, it probably is. If someone's reaching out to you and wants to be your best friend and they don't even know you. So to me, that's one of the most pivotal things I've ever heard. Again, we've lost a little touch of connecting with technology. And I think, to me, that's great advice. The other one we've already kind of talked about, still getting to know your child, having them feel comfortable talking to you, being with them, being connected to them is the best prevention there is.
One added bonus, I love what the FBI said. If it's too good to be true, parents, talk about what's too good to be true. Does that seem, because if kids don't know, they'll be like, no, mom, I can imagine that. A kid on YouTube won $1 million. So that's not too good to be true. It's the realistic dialogue. And then also another thing for grandparents, if you have them in your life, one of the tactics a lot of bad people will do is they'll create anger. And they'll say, well, you have to wait for your kids to come home to do this. And if they ever create resistance or anger, US-based customer service people will never do that. If they create anger or are hostile to you, typically that's too bad to be true, right? And
Right.
That's, I want people to notice too. I always remind people in our program there, because that's scary.
Yeah. And as a psychologist, we always use that technique in couples therapy or other things. Like, you don't always have to answer right away. You can take a few minutes to think and process. So anyone who's going to force you to answer right away doesn't probably have your best interest in mind.
100%. And that's in business too. Anybody
Yeah.
who forces you to make a business decision quickly it's not a good deal. And that works for your child, for everybody, for the most
Right.
part.
Yeah.
For the most part. Okay, let's move into the next question I have for you. This is all about parent engagement, something really important to districts nationwide. What are your suggestions to other districts to increase parent engagement? And a follow-up question in line with that, are there any specific channels, group events, or any other ways to get the biggest turnout?
Those are really hard questions that I'm not going to pretend I have the answer to, but I think we've tried a variety of things for parent engagement. So we've tried different times. I think we all assume parents are available at 6 o'clock, at 7:30, but there's some parents who work second shift or third shift, and that's a sleeping time for them or a working time. I think, again, COVID made us realize how online meetings and offering Google Meets or Skype has helped people be more available. There's also people who are more comfortable in a less formal setting like this. So I think variety would be the key word I would use there, and options for people is really important. And then I think, to answer your second question, it's just really important that you listen to people and don't assume you're the expert. I think a lot of times we think we know best, but I think it's important. Going back to students, I always like to ask students what they think. I think it goes for parents too. Asking parents, what works best for them always seems to result in better results than just assuming you know. That goes for life too, by the way, but easier said than done.
We have a motto in May this month that we have at our company. It's called Startup Energy. And startups are all about pivoting, listening to that customer. Is our product perfect? Are we listening? And SmartSocial is a startup, because nothing is set in stone in social media. And so exactly what you're saying, everybody teaches us. We have a knowledge, a large brain power, a bucket of knowledge, and everybody puts something in there, and maybe it tweaks it a little bit. That startup energy over here means we're always adapting and fluid, and engaging parents is different every month, right?
Yeah.
COVID completely changed it.
It did. And I love that, because it's also not taking it personally, right? Like, just because a parent says, I didn't like your presentation, doesn't mean they don't like you.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to take feedback, critical feedback, without taking it personally. That's really hard.
I'll tell you what, on a personal note, after traveling to 29 states, Doctor, and meeting amazing people like you, I've had some parents in the back, like upset dads, just going, what are you saying? Are you meaning this? And I had to not take it personally. I had to go, okay, I'm going to create a better slide in the beginning. And I didn't tell them this. I kind of did. I said, I didn't explain that right. I'm going to build a better slide. And that's a reasonable answer or question. And I hear you. And that's kind of what they want to hear. And then they calm down and they go, because there might be a lot going on in their brain about their kids, and they're hearing something that's outside their commonplace. And so
you just nailed my favorite saying, and what a lot of people know me for, is I always say it's not about what it's about. And what I mean by that is exactly what you said. That dad's not mad at you for what you said. It's not about what it's about. It might be something really personal that happened to him. It might be that his daughter was on Snapchat doing something and you just made him feel like it was his fault. But I always find it's not about what it's about. And I think my job as a psychologist, as assistant superintendent, is to find out what it's really about, to
Wow.
address that, and then to fix it.
Wow. That's so powerful. Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. Okay, we're about to dive into the biggest question of the year, the thing everybody's talking about, AI. But at first, I have to give a shout out to all of our partner school districts. Thank you so much for being a partner of ours. And as the doctor just said, it's all about variety and options. Thanks for partnering with us to let us deliver 54 plus live parent engagement events and also putting our modules at the beginning of your combined events, whether it's a recital, choir practice, wherever parents are on board, you're using our modules and our key takeaway documents that are dialogue starters with social emotional learning. Thank you for letting us be a part of your community and 10xing your parent engagement. We're learning along with you. We don't have all the answers, but we're listening to more people than I think anybody else. And we have an army of parents doing the research, testing with our little startup energy, trying to iterate every single day. So shout out to the dozens and dozens of school districts that are using our program nationwide in the United States alone. Thank you very much. We're grateful. And we have a lot of really neat things in store for the future on how to engage students with our new student database and login and all that really cool stuff. All right, we're back to the program. Doctor, let's talk about the biggest thing that people are talking about. You mentioned it earlier. How is your school district approaching AI tools like ChatGPT?
So it's really interesting. Our policy involves AI and how can students use it. As most things, students were ahead of us on this one. I'm sure many students were using AI to write papers and other things. Now we're incorporating it into our language arts curriculum and having teachers teach students how to use it. But again, I'm not going to pretend we're the experts on that either. I know some of our administrators are looking at how to use AI to help write things. But again, as you said, I think the key is to not be afraid of the unknown, but be cautiously optimistic might be the best word for it, and use it. As you said, if we only stick with screwdrivers, would we be where we are now? So I think that's where we're at.
And I know 6 months ago, we would ask a lot of students and teachers and say, where does AI fit in the classroom? And kids were really afraid for a while. Chris, kids were really afraid. Oh, I don't use that because they were told don't use it. And that's okay. We understand. But it's kind of like spell check. Maybe it teaches you eventually that you're using the I before E wrong in that situation. And it starts coaching you gently. We have one of these monthly parent-friendly webinars that we have at SmartSocial that is so much fun because it's all about turning parents into the homework hero, which is fun because I don't know about you, but I don't do calculus much. But if the kids needed calculus homework help, that would be exhausting. You sit side by side and you're the expert, but we hear from a lot of moms. They go, hey, when my son is side by side, we have the best discussions because I'm not looking at him. We're looking out the windshield of the car as we drive. But if you're doing homework side by side and you make the AI the expert, hey, I don't know how to do the calculus homework. Let's ask this ChatGPT. It's the free version. What would we do here? And teach your kids how to ask it. It doesn't give you the answer. It gives you the thought process and then the answer way at the bottom. And parents are going, this is the world's best tutor. Have you heard any stories about that, Chris? Something like that?
I have not, but what you're describing from a psychologist perspective is tackling something together. And the problem is the thing you're tackling together instead of the two of you tackling each other, so to speak, which is really the problem. And whenever I have parents that I'm working with, they're having issues with their student, what you described is really bringing in a third party to be the thing you're looking at instead of each other. So it sounds as from a psychologist perspective like a great solution because otherwise you're at each other. Instead, you're solving a problem together. As you know, that works in history and all kinds of things you can point to. When there's a common goal or a common enemy, you tend to work together better.
There's an old rap song by Vanilla Ice and it says, show me a problem and yo, I'll solve it, which is so... I heard that song yesterday and I went, what a great line. He always had and now he's a very successful TV star about flipping houses. And he always goes, I can fix any problem. I just have to figure out how to solve it. I think AI is there to do that. Hey, doctor, thank you so much for joining us here today. I'm so grateful. It's been about 8 or 9 years since I've come to your community.
Yeah.
Shout out to David Kaufman, just a great teacher and all around person. I'm grateful for having him as a friend and also your community. And what you all are doing to bring the kiddos together with parents and the district is really terrific. So thank you for your time today.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. Thanks for all you do too. We continue to use your resources, and our parents continue to use your resources together with their students, which I think is what's most important.
That's a huge honor. Thanks to everybody watching here today. As the title of my book says, remember to keep it light, bright, and polite, because your kids are watching what you're doing online and offline. We'll see all of you on the next episode. Thanks for all your support. Take care. Thanks for listening to our SmartSocial.com podcast. I'm your host, Josh Ochs. This was our District Talk segment where we interview school district leaders to learn how they're keeping students safe on social media so those students can someday launch into their future by shining online. This episode was brought to you by our SmartSocial.com VIP program. It's called the Very Informed Parent Program, which helps you engage your students with teen-led video lessons. Stay one step ahead with our premium parent newsletter and discover hidden features on trending apps on teens' phones and our 54+ live parent and student-friendly events every single year. You can click on the link below to chat with one of our team members if you want a free pass to our VIP program to support your community with our SmartSocial.com resources. And if you're a district leader who has a success story, we would love to feature you on a future episode. You can click the links below to reach out. Thanks so much for listening, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Have a great day.